Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar this morning. My name is Mark Lusted. I'm Managing Director of Dock9 and I'm going to be talking today about financial services chatbots, how to build one and why the time is now. So I'm going to wait a few minutes just to let a couple more people join, but while we wait, on the right hand side of your screen there should be a box where you can ask questions, and at the end of the session we're going to do a quick Q&A and run through those at the end. If we can't get to all of them, because we are time limited today, we'll do a follow-up email and answer them separately afterwards. Good. So let's get started. So as mentioned, I'm MD of Dock9. In terms of who Dock9 are and what we do, we are a digital innovation agency that works in the financial services sector. We help incumbent players innovate, adapt, build digital platforms such as websites, brokers, chatbots, and our kind of main role really is to help incumbent players innovate and hit back at the startups. So over the last 18 months we've done an increasing amount of work within the chatbot space, and I want to share some of those thoughts and lessons learned on those projects with you today. So we've got 30 minutes for me to speak, and we've got quite a packed agenda. What we're going to cover off is, first of all, answer what is a chatbot, then talk about how they work, then focus on what the common use cases are and benefits, and we're going to focus specifically on the financial services sector. And then I guess the main message of today is to help you think about how you can get started planning and building one. And then, as I say, we're going to end with a Q&A session. So firstly, what is a chatbot? So chatbots give customers a live chat experience, so enabling them to ask questions in normal human language and get an answer back. And the answer coming back isn't from a human being typing, it's from a bot. So it's automated by a computer. And how these work, they're powered by artificial intelligence, and specifically a subset of AI called natural language processing. And what this enables the bot to do is to understand the intent of the question, so break up that human language, identify the intent, and give them an answer back. And although chatbots have existed in some form for I think 50 years or so now, it's really over the last 10 years that natural language processing has improved to such a degree that a lot more use cases have been available, and a lot more companies are using this technology. And also the barriers to entry have become a lot lower. The responses that are given to the user can be from a predefined list of scripts and phrases, machine learning applications, external data sources. In this instance, it could be your internal systems. And most common use cases include, well, the obvious one, answering frequently asked questions, helping users answer account-specific questions, and more. The general idea is to automate repetitive inquiries and tasks to free up your human agents to focus on more useful work. So with a well-executed chatbot, it's actually really difficult in some instances to tell whether you're talking to a human or a machine. And in the e-commerce space, chatbots have become quite prevalent over the last couple of years, and I'm sure most people on this webinar have actually interacted with one and perhaps not realised they have. Key thing also to understand about chatbots is they're multi-channel, so you can utilise them on your website and integrate them. They can be integrated with chat platforms like Facebook Messenger, so that's really useful if you've got a Facebook page for your business and you want to offer that chatbot functionality directly within Facebook. And also they can be plugged into voice assistants such as Alexa and Cortana and others. So what are the benefits? Well, the benefits, first of all, for the users are, for well-executed chatbots, the user can have a much better user experience. They can get an instant response anytime, any day, without having to pick up the phone or and call your organisation or search out answers on your website. If you think about it from the business perspective, it's really enabling you to make better use of human effort within your organisation. So for most organisations, there are a range of routine, simple queries coming from customers that really don't need to be answered by a human, and the idea here is that bots can free up your teams, be they sales or servicing, to focus on higher value conversations. Another benefit is cost efficiency and scalability. So in terms of the scalability of your organisation, well, first of all, bots They don't call in sick, and they can answer an almost unlimited number of queries at once. And in terms of helping businesses manage the peaks of inquiries from customers, well, there's no better example than COVID-19, is there? And the challenges that a lot of organisations are faced with their call centres, dealing with quite unprecedented spikes of inquiries from customers. Well, actually, chatbot technology has really helped, and those organisations have embraced it during this period. But also, chatbots enable you to have a better understanding of your users on an ongoing basis. So the second you launch a chatbot, it's going to be gathering all sorts of information. Lots of every query that's coming through is going to be logged in those conversations. You're going to understand at a much bigger scale exactly what your customers are wanting from you as an organisation in real time. And this can have benefits not just for the team that are looking to optimize and refine the bot after launch, but also other areas of the business that can benefit from this data. So if we look at the financial services sector, there are a number of uses and examples of companies embracing this. A big example would be NatWest, who launched their Cora chatbot a number of years ago, which I've actually interacted with as a customer, had a good experience with. And this is our answering account queries effectively, and those that don't need human intervention. A project that we helped launch last year was for Kensington Mortgages, and this actually was slightly different. This was aimed at, this is B2B, so it's aimed at brokers. So the users of this are mortgage brokers that want to ask criteria questions about Kensington's mortgage products. And this has delivered actually quite a big business benefit. Kensington spoke at our mortgage transformation event last October and publicly shared that after launching the chatbot, they had a near 20% reduction in queries over the phone related to lending criteria. So quite a meaningful business impact there. If we look at the moment, there's a lot of news about organisations kind of quite rapidly adopting this technology and building upon existing chatbots to deal with COVID-19 inquiries that are coming through. So I think this is a great example of a technology that's not just found its time, but it's really starting to reap business benefits and real tangible benefits to businesses that have kind of taken that first step and adopted it. So, how do you get started? Big question. Well, the first thing is to think about, a chatbot development project is no different from any other digital development project. So if you've been involved in designing and building a website or a portal or digital platform, you go through a process something like this. You go through discovery and research, design and prototyping, implementation, development, testing and launch. And there could be variations of this process, agile for example, but fundamentally you don't just rush straight into building something. You need to start with that discovery and research process. And with bots, that's more important than ever. So the typical steps in that process are, first of all, identifying and validating the use case. So what we normally do is actually spend some time at the call centre. So sometimes our team go on site and sit with them for a number of days. We'll spend time analysing the most common customer inquiries coming through. You've probably already got some insights on this in your organisation already. A good place to start would be if you've got kind of decent published FAQs. That's a good place to start. If you've got a large call centre, there may well be some already existing research or at least stats available about the utilisation of the call centre, so classification of inquiries broken down by volume. That can be really useful here in terms of identifying opportunities. And then user research. Again, if you have implemented a website recently or a portal, you may well have some existing research around the users of you as a company, broken down into different personas, which can be really valuable for this project, because what you need to understand is who is going to be using this bot, what do they need from you as an organisation, and how can you deliver it. So either which way, you need to do some user research at the beginning of this project. And you then need to, once you've identified and listed out the common queries that are coming through, you need to split these between those that are kind of common and generic or specific to the customer. And what I mean here is those that can be answered in a generic way around your policies or opening times, for example, or how to reset a password, or those that are specific to the customer, as in their case, their loan, their policy, etc. where that would require the plugging into internal systems, and it's a different level of complexity to implement. If it's the latter, and a lot of the use cases around, okay, tell me my current balance, or I want to, for an insurance company, I want to add a vehicle or driver to my motor policy, for example, and you want to automate that for a chatbot, that journey, well, that would require plugging into internal systems, and at this point, you should have discussions and identify, sense check, is that technically feasible based on your internal systems. So for each of these, you should make a rough estimate of the complexity to implement. So to that last point, that will be really instructive to help you understand that. And compare these against their potential value to the business. So a good example actually would be forgotten passwords. So you'd be surprised the amount of organisations we go to that when we do analysis, there are common things like that are not well signposted to the user, or there's poor user experience on the site, or portal, and that's generating unnecessary calls to the call center, for example. So one way of fixing that is to better signpost that on the site or platform, but also is to utilize a chatbot to help point people in the right direction. So with these identified, you can focus on the low-cost, high-gain opportunities first. At this juncture, it's also good to think about, okay, you launch a chatbot, how will you judge the success of this chatbot? What are the success metrics? You can identify and build a business case, but also you can set up a framework for reporting afterwards. So if all that sounds quite complicated, well, this is normally in a kind of fast-paced project, you'd be tackling these in a number of workshops over a number of days in quite an intensive project. But it's really important to get that foundation of the project correct at the beginning. The next thing you need to do is to define the intentions. So within chatbot world, intentions refer to when a user is asking a question in natural language, well, what are they actually meaning by that, and how does that map to you as a business? So you need to define these within this project for your chatbot. So what does this mean? Well, an example would be, an intention would be customers asking questions around your opening hours. So they may use different expressions to ask this, but fundamentally they're all grouped into one intention. They want to know what your opening hours are. So you can, this is a very basic example, but you can have the bot program to give a response. Another intention could be that they are interested in a COVID-19 payment holiday. So, a lot of inquiries coming through the last sort of 2 and a bit months for this. People might ask this in different ways. I need a payment holiday on my mortgage, or am I eligible for a payment break on my mortgage? Well, once you've identified this intention and program that's in the bot, you can then program a response which is effectively enables you to answer some triage questions and help that customer specifically. So in this instance, they're saying, okay, we're putting in place some measures to support our customers through coronavirus. Before we start, please can we confirm whether you've already applied for a payment holiday? Options for the user would be yes, I have, or no, I haven't. And on the back of that, you can ask follow-up question and follow-up question back and forth until you get to the point where you can give the user the information they want. Another example would be of an intention would be a case update. So someone asking in different ways for an update on, in this instance, a mortgage application. And the bot response, again, would be saying, okay, well, we can help you, but before I run you through some security questions, I need to confirm first whether you are a borrower or broker. Options for the user to choose would be borrower, broker, other. And the reason I'm mentioning these here is within the process of designing your bot, you need to define these related to your business. And that's really, really important. And again, I'm not looking to get too technical on this, but I think it's really important that all business users watching this understand kind of a bit of the technical concepts that sit behind this. So a level below in intentions of the user is entities within the world of chatbots. So an entity effectively complements or modifies an intention, and you use these to narrow the bot's understanding so it can deliver a better response to the user. So an example to bring this to life. So we've identified an intent or intention for the user. They want to update their motor insurance policy. So this is an insurance company example. And if we read out the sentence that the user entered, I want to update my policy to add a new driver from next Monday at 1 PM. Okay, so let's do that again, but break that down by entity now. So I want to update my policy. So we're going to identify that this is a type of entity midterm adjustment. And then to add a new driver. So we're then narrowing it down and saying, okay, actually this is an entity midterm adjustment type add driver from next Monday. So we've identified the time that they want to change their policy. And that's really, really important, again, when you think about the next stage, which is when you're defining the flows. So you would have a flow, if somebody just said, oh, I want to update my policy, well, you would have a flow design, say, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to add a driver? Do you want to add a vehicle? Do you want to remove a driver, etc.? But actually, in this sentence, we actually identified in a more narrow way that they want to add a driver to their policy. So that was a more distinct entity here. And off the back of that, you would ask questions specific to that, and you need to design them. So if the user is an anonymous user on your site, you would ask security questions. If they're logged into a portal, you perhaps wouldn't. You would ask, what's the driver name, etc., etc. So that's just really important as a concept to understand when we talk about the next step. So you've defined the entities at this point and also the intents. So if we think about designing the flow of the conversation with the user, really, really recommend starting with a pen and paper, or ideally, in previous months, we would be in our office with a whiteboard on the wall. So hopefully we can get back to that in the not too distant future. But at minimum, pen and paper, or you can use a tool like Microsoft Visio to visually map out this flow, the conversational steps the user is going to take through the journey. So key thing here is this is really useful to map this out visually, is to ensure there are no dead ends in the flow. And then within this, you would get to the granular detail of designing the conversation flow for intentions and entities. So as I mentioned on the last step, if someone's saying, okay, well, I want to add a driver to my motor policy, well, this is where you would design what questions a user would be asked back, and it's back and forth between the bot and the user. And a term that's often used is multi-turn, or you might want to think of them as triage questions. So these are follow-up questions to the user, either to point them in the right direction, if it's to another system or another page or whatnot, or for more complicated bots to actually plug into your system and do the transaction directly within the bot. When you're designing your flow, you effectively have a number of building blocks available that you can use. So the first is the bot can respond with text, kind of obvious stuff. Within that text, often you'll be designing follow-up questions to go to the user or statements. The bot can respond with an image. The bot can respond with what's called a card. So a card response has an image, a title, and description, and can have a hyperlink on some platforms. I guess this is if you're looking to send someone else out, out of this experience into a different platform, or highlight some other content to them. The bot can also respond with text with options, and this is probably one of the most used kind of building blocks, I guess, is where you can narrow down and instead of, if you've understood the intent of the user, and actually to take this conversation forward in a meaningful way, you need to then narrow it down to some specific options for the user to choose. So instead of the user responding in natural language, at this part of the conversation, they'll respond by choosing option 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay, so I'm going to rush it through fairly quickly, but there's a lot to cover, so hopefully that makes sense. So you have identified the use case. You have identified the intentions and entities that the user will be interacting with your company on. You've mapped out the user journey, the flow of the conversation. You need to identify the platform that you're going to roll this out on and implement it. And the great news is there are lots of platforms available now, many, and really they're really to use them are quite cost effective, and the barriers to entry become quite low. There are many platforms out there. There's some that have joined us, not on this list, that have actually joined us in this webinar today. So hi there. Some popular platforms are below, including the Microsoft Bot Framework, Dialogflow, Amazon Lex, IBM Watson, etc. At Dock9 we're agnostic to platform, but through some research and some initial projects that we've done over the last 18 months, we've done the majority of our implementations on the Microsoft Bot Framework. And there's various reasons for that. Primarily, a lot of the work we do is within the Microsoft stack anyway, in terms of integrating portals and delivering websites and .NET. And it's a great platform, fairly cost effective to use. And in addition to the platform itself, it has great analytics functionality as well. So most of the platforms have this, and something you should look at when you're considering what bot platform is right for your company. But you need to be able to have good analytics around what are the actual conversations coming through, what is the usage, are people getting the answer they want, how many questions are they asking to get the answer they want, so you can look to refine this bot over time. So with a platform identified, and as I say, a lot of these platforms enable you to spin up a fairly simple bot, to be honest, but you can build question and answer bots fairly simply using these platforms, sometimes in a number of days. Build a minimum viable product focused on the simplest and highest impact features. So again, going back to that planning, that's really, really important. You have the context, you've identified what use cases are going to resonate with users, what's likely to deliver some business impact with less implementation costs, and it's less likely to be on your proof of concept, plugging into your internal systems to enable self-servicing of adjustments or case updates, things like that. But there's certainly, as a good foundational step, things like answering common queries, FAQ type bots are a great first step for an organisation. The first iteration of an FAQ style chatbot could be built in just days, whereas, as I say, something more complicated that integrates with your systems could take weeks or months to implement. At this point, you are going to be, so you've designed the flow, a very top level, intents. At this point, you'll be, putting the final words in that the user's going to be seeing. So you need to think at this point about the tone of voice. Is your brand voice formal or informal, and how should your chatbot reflect this? And then, perhaps the most important point: test with users. And by users, I don't mean internal users or send the link to your mates. Actually, at the beginning of the project, when you've identified the persona of users that will be using this platform, or using this bot rather, test with them. So you could hire 6 or 12 users, or recruit them to take part in usability testing. So they come for an hour each to test. We normally do this in a lab in our office, but we can do it remote now. You can do it remote as well. And the idea here is that by building something small, you haven't invested a huge amount of time and money in it, but you've hopefully generated some interesting ideas and concepts that could bring value to your business. Well, before you actually launch to the market or go completely full with the implementation, it's a great idea to get users into a lab. So how this works is you set the user a task on the bot. So it could be find this piece of information out, or if you have built a more complex bot, update your policy, or find this, make a change to this mortgage or whatnot. And then you let the user use the tool, and then when they get stuck, you ask them what's going through their head, why they got stuck, what their thoughts are. And often this can be quite illuminating. This is really, really important for websites, portals. We do that on every project we develop, but actually for chatbots, it's even more important. For a lot of users, it's something new, and you need to check that your cohort of users that are utilising your company and you're going to utilise this chatbot, that this is resonating well with them and it's talking to them in a language that they understand. And I think you'll get some. We always get really interesting insights from that user testing. Take those learnings. Make the refinements in the bot, so it could be you ask things in a slightly confusing way in your first iteration, or it could be you need to add some more functionality to make it truly meaningful to the user to use this. But the key thing is to refine that. You may want to do another round of user testing with the users. That may just be enough to do one round, and then launch. And launch as quick as possible is my advice. Tips and lessons learned from projects. I think that to build upon that last point about launching as quick as possible. Obviously, you want to launch a quality product, but we've learned, and I'm a big believer in starting small. So if you identify and focus on those low effort, maximum impact use cases first, your minimum viable product is very likely to deliver some tangible business benefits fairly quickly. So anyone that's been involved in IT change projects over the years, the word quickly sometimes doesn't always seem familiar. There's lots of challenges around legacy platforms, etc. If you identify the right use case for a chatbot, there is an opportunity here to deliver some, bang for buck, some actual value reasonably quickly, which can be really great at getting buy-in and building momentum for future phases. Second, listen to your users. So not just during the user testing that I just described there, but actually from the second your chatbot launches, it's going to be logging all of the queries coming through, all the conversations, and you're going to be gathering a ton of really interesting and useful data on what your users need from you as an organisation. So these should be used to regularly evolve and improve the chatbot, but also, as I alluded to at the beginning of this presentation or early on, this actually could be some really interesting information here, that could be utilised by other parts of your business. Have an open mind. So, it's exciting technology. There is opportunity here, but you need to ask yourself honestly, early on in the ideation process and discovery, is this a genuine fit for the technology, or would it be better suited left to human interaction? So poorly executed chatbots can have a negative impact on your NPS score and your customer experience. So you need to choose carefully. And also expect different responses from different users. So you need to recognise that different cohorts, personas of users within your customer base or your users may respond differently to the bot. So certainly we've seen that in testing where particular groups of users are much more open to using bots than others. Those that are more used to using conversational interfaces, maybe they're of a generation where they're a lot more used to using WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, etc. They're quite used to using these interfaces. For others, they're less used to it. So you need to kind of expect that and don't expect a bot to solve all your problems for all users. During the research, for example, going back to that forgotten password example, you may have identified that your password reset functionality is really hidden on your site and it's causing lots of problems at the call center by people calling in. You actually, that could be solved and supplemented by a bot helping point users in the right direction or undertake that password reset. But separate from that, you should take those learnings and look to improve those other platforms off the back of that research as well. Okay, so to wrap up, obviously I've communicated a fair amount of information in that half an hour this morning. Hopefully that all made sense. But I guess a key takeout we're looking to communicate is it doesn't need to be complicated. We have helped some of our clients identify use cases and build bots within a number of weeks. For those bots that don't require systems integration, you can deliver a lot of benefit fairly rapidly using this technology. And with the barriers to entry for the technology so low now, it certainly is a good time to at least consider a chatbot for your business. So, thank you. Thank you for your time joining this morning. If you need any help or advice, do feel free to pop our team an email to hello@dock9.com and they'll be happy to help. So, the Q&A. We're going to move now to answering some questions that came through during the webinar. If you want to add some more now, do feel free to do so. And just give me a moment to read these briefly and then we'll run through.